I ask you to recognize me on the committee substitute, Senate Bill 22.
Okay, this time we recognize Chair Huffman to lay out Senate Bill 22 and explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Members, the Texas Moving Image Industry Incentive Program, also known as TMIP, was established in 2007 by the 80th legislature to provide reimbursement grants to projects in the moving image industry, which are produced in Texas, grow the state's economy, and create jobs for Texans. Over the life of the program, we've seen a significant economic impact on the state, over $2.5 billion in in-state spending, and 189,000 Texas jobs created. For every dollar paid in a grant, $4.69 is spent in state, according to the Office of the Governor. The city of Fort Worth alone has seen more than $700 million in economic impact, as well as support for over 30,000 local jobs. The current program provides a strong framework with careful reimbursement parameters to safeguard taxpayer dollars. All reimbursement is based on in-state spending, which is carefully and thoroughly reviewed, including wages paid to Texas residents, payments to Texas domiciled entities, air travel to and from Texas on a Texas-based airline, and legal fees paid to Texas-based lawyers. Everything, I repeat, is tied to an impact on Texas. However, the current levels of reimbursement is not as robust as other states. This fact, coupled with inconsistent funding levels for the program, has put Texas at a disadvantage. We heard testimony over the interim that producers who want to film in Texas often have difficulty convincing the capital management side of film production companies to allow filming here when presented with more robust and consistent incentives being offered in other states. Senate Bill 22 keeps the existing framework for TMIP within the Office of the Governor and provides more long-term stability in funding by creating a new fund to incentivize new investments and film production in Texas. Senate Bill 22 creates the Texas Moving Image Industry Incentive Fund, a new fund established outside the Treasury and provides a statutorily directed deposit of $500 million from sales tax revenue to the fund on a biennial basis for the next decade for the purpose of funding reimbursement grants for in-state spending on moving image projects. It provides authority for the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Trust Company to invest monies in the fund. The bill reiterates that it is the intent of the legislature that the governor's office is not required to act on any grant application and may deny an application because of inappropriate content that portrays Texas or Texans in a negative fashion, and that moving image projects funded under the program conform to general standards of decency. It further codifies a list of projects that are currently not eligible for reimbursement grants to include pornography or obscene material, political advertising, casino-type video games, and more. And the bill also preserves the right for the Office of the Governor to review final content before issuing any grant payment. SB 22 codifies the current tiers for reimbursement grants depending on the type of project and the total amount of in-state spending, with two exceptions. It lowers the threshold of in-state spending that would qualify for the top-tier base reimbursement rate to $1.5 million. It's currently $3.5 million in rule to benefit smaller and mid-sized productions, and raises the top-tier base reimbursement rate from 20% to 25%. It also provides 4 available uplifts in addition to the baseline amount for which the project is eligible for reimbursement for projects designated by the Office of the Governor as a Texas Heritage Project by considering the project's current and likely future effect on the promotion of family values, or whether the project portrays Texas and Texans in a positive fashion. Or it projects that spend a certain percentage of the project's filming days in rural counties, and that's going to be defined as a population of 300,000 or less. Projects that hire Texas resident veterans as 5% of their combined total paid cast and crew, and projects that extend a certain percentage of a project's in-state spend during post-production. The uplifts can be combined, but cannot exceed a total of 6% above the base reimbursement rate. Finally, Senate Bill 22 sunsets on August the 31st, 2035. Texas has created a strong infrastructure to incentivize moving image production in our state. We have created new economic and job opportunities for Texas residents and businesses, and at the same time, safeguarded Texas taxpayer dollars with careful reimbursement grant perimeters. While the program has been successful, the time has come to examine a different funding mechanism to provide more consistency and predictability for future applicants. And with that, that's the layout. And that was the layout for the committee substitutes. I will send up the committee substitute.
Chair Hubbard sends up a committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. It's ordered adopted. At this time, I'd like to recognize Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick for being present. Thank you. And we'll proceed to have invited testimony. We'll have two people on this table and two people to my right.
Senator Zaffarini has a question. Her light is on.
Senator Zaffarini.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have one question for Senator Huffman. Senator Huffman, I heard you say that there is a sunset provision in 2035?
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that we can't extend it at that time, correct?
Correct. The legislature at that time could see that it's successful, which I am 100% sure that it will, and that it proves, I think at that time, we're going to be the new motion picture capital of the world, producing high-quality, family-oriented, and really good quality films. And if the legislature wants,
So we could extend it then or even before?
it's up to the legislature.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other question, members? If not, we'll start invited testimony. We have Adriana Cruz. Please come up to the table, and we have Stephanie Whalen. Stephanie? We'll start with those two. Just identify yourself and who you represent, and then you may begin.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chairwoman Huffman, Vice Chair Hinojosa, and committee members. My name is Adriana Cruz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Economic Development and Tourism Office, a trusted program in the Office of the Governor. I'm here today to testify on Senate Bill 22 and the Texas Moving Image Industry Incentive Program. With me today is Stephanie Whalen, Director of the Texas Film Commission. First, let me start by saying thank you to the Lieutenant Governor, to Chair Huffman, and to this committee for your strong interest and support of the moving image industry in Texas. Last October, I testified before this committee during the interim session and just wanted to refresh the committee members on some of the information and some of the slides that were provided at that time. On slide 2, you see the Texas Economic Development and Tourism Office, and the Film Commission is one of the divisions within that office and plays an important role in the state's economic development efforts. Slide 3, the Texas Film Commission was established in 1971 to encourage the development of the film communication industry. Since that time, the Texas Film Commission has expanded to include traditional media such as television and commercials, as well as digital media such as video games, animation, visual effects, and extended reality industries. It became a part of the Texas Economic Development and Tourism Office in 2015. On slide 4, one of the programs that's managed by the Texas Film Commission is the Texas Moving Image Industry Incentive Program, which was established, and the purpose is to provide performance-based grants to projects in the moving image industry which are produced in Texas, thereby growing our economy and creating jobs. TMIP provides qualifying film, television, commercial, animation, visual effects, video game, extended reality, and other moving image productions the opportunity to receive a cash grant based on a percentage of a project's eligible Texas expenditures, including eligible wages paid to Texas residents. Grants vary by budget levels and types of productions and are issued after the production is finished and upon a complete audit and review of the project's Texas expenditures. Slide 5 is just a summary of the current program as it stands now. The base incentive rate of between 5 to 20% with a maximum of 25% with the uplifts and the additional grants that are available. On the next slide, we get into Senate Bill 22 and the overview. So this slide shows the changes to the program under Senate Bill 22. The base incentive rate is now between 5 to 25%. Reimbursement of eligible local spend, again, depending on the budget of the project as outlined in the chart, as well as the type of project that it is. There are additional grants and uplifts available, which includes a 2.5% heritage, 2.5% for productions in a rural county of less than 300,000, 2.5% for veteran hiring, and 1% for post-production. These uplifts are stackable, but no grant can exceed 31%. The next slide shows a flow chart on the process of how an application is approved by the Texas Film Commission staff. Once an application packet is received and deemed complete, the incentives team reviews the application package, including the budget, the amount of in-state spend, the potential economic impact, whether funding has been secured. This stage also includes a script and content review. If the project does not meet TFC guidelines, then the applicant is informed and the project could be denied at that point. If the project does meet the Texas Film Commission guidelines, a recommendation packet is made for our executive review, including content notes. If approved, then the encumbrance is processed and the applicant is notified with an award letter and a contract is executed. The applicant then proceeds with production. Once the project has completed production and completed spending money in Texas, the applicant must turn in their expended budget and final qualifying documentation within 60 days of their final Texas spend date. The Texas Film Commission staff completes an initial review of documentation, including the local spend, the production days, locations, and residency requirements. If this review shows any discrepancy or issues, the staff notifies the applicant and works with them and notifies them of a potential default. Once this review is complete, the final documentation is sent to the Office of Compliance and Monitoring in the Office of the Governor for a detailed audit review. Once these financials have been verified, the Film Commission staff reviews all the recommendations. If this audit is in compliance, then the Film Commission does a final content review to ensure that all deliverables have been met. If this is approved, then a payment request is submitted and the check or direct deposit payment is made directly to the applicant based on the actual amount of qualifying expenditures. These following slides, slide 9, is just, was included in my last presentation, was just a reminder for you all of the funding levels that the program has received over time. Last session was the largest appropriation in the program's history. Slide 10 shows the applications that have been received from fiscal year 2018 through fiscal year 24, and how many have been approved and how many have been denied. Given the high level of interest in Texas, the Film Commission expects to encumber the full appropriated $200 million amount by the end of this biennium. Slide 11 is also just a reminder to show you how the spending levels have increased over time. You can see that prior to fiscal year 18-19, the in-state spend was around 150 to 275 million, and then it increases significantly. And this has been updated to show fiscal year to date the amount of in-state spend of the approved projects. One question that we have received is there sufficient demand to justify the increased investment? And we believe that there is. During the last biennium, we received multiple applications at the start of the biennium, including Fear the Walking Dead, Walker, Bass Reeves, and 1923. Each one of these with an in-state spend of between $70 million to $80 million. At a 22.5% grant for each of them, that would have been a maximum grant for each of $18 million. And if you add in projects like The Chosen and Lioness, in addition to any other productions looking at the state, that would have been over 100 million in grants just for those projects. Slide 12 shows the TMIP return on investment calculation, which Chairwoman Huffman alluded to in her remarks. The ROI from the lifetime of the program, projects that have been coming to Texas have spent $2.5 billion of in-state spending, creating more than 189,000 direct Texas jobs. And that has a 469% return on investment. So for every dollar that we spend in grant, that's $4.69 spent in our communities. The following slide shows how do we calculate this return on investment. This is not a true economic impact because we are not looking at indirect jobs or the ancillary benefits of this spend. This is a direct calculation, a very straightforward calculation. ROI looks at the value of the investment minus the cost of the investment divided by the cost of an investment times 100. And so if we take our $2.5 billion in-state spend minus the amount of grants that we have awarded, which is $443 million, divided by the grants awarded, times 100 is 469%. So that is how the ROI is calculated. And then to close my remarks, I just wanted to provide an example of a production that took place in Texas and how that would compare today versus with under SB 22. We're looking at 1883. So from the date of acceptance, August 23rd, 2021, were the production dates through January 2022, filming in Weatherford, Fort Worth, Granbury, Palo Pinto, Guthrie, Toller, the Panhandle, Dallas, Jacksboro, and Palestine. Production jobs of 1,955 and a local spend of $65 million. That final slide, slide 15, just goes through the numbers for a TMIP grant versus under SB 22. The grant award is slightly higher with the uplifts and a higher base rate of 25%. So we're at 27.5%. With the hiring of Texas residents, the Texas spend, and that Texas spend does include Texas wages. And so then the final grant amount of $15.5 million. And with that, that concludes my testimony. Ms. Whalen and I are here to answer any questions that you might have. I just want to thank you for your continued support of these important programs. Thank you so much.
Chair Huffman.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work you're doing on this program. Just a couple of questions to clarify further. When you talk about in-state spend, that means money spent in the state of Texas, right? Because I think some people are confused about that. And that's the only part of the project that is available for the incentive grant, correct?
That is correct.
So money that is spent maybe doing some of the production in another state or in California, none of that ever is part of the grant calculation, correct?
That is correct.
Could you explain a little more carefully about salaries, because some people are confused about that. I as well. Only a Texas resident can be part of the grant. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I'm going to turn it over to our Texas Film Commission Director, Stephanie Whalen.
So to follow up, if you have a star, for example, whose residence is not in Texas, who hasn't chosen to move to Texas, then their salary cannot be used as part of the calculation for the grant. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairwoman, that is correct. If they cannot prove that they are a Texas resident, then their salary cannot count towards the incentive.
Okay. And the amount that they can, but the amount is determined by other factors, but they have to be a Texas resident.
Yes, that is,
All right.
we audit for residency first and foremost, and anyone who is determined not to be a valid Texas resident, then their wages are immediately removed during the audit
And
process.
is that currently in the rules that you, or is that just in the new SB 22?
It's currently in the rules.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. And just for those listening, SB 22 is very close to what the rules have been, but we have made some alterations, which I think I set out in my remarks, but you have alluded to as well. Another issue I want to talk to you briefly about is when you went through your presentation on slide 10, you talk about applications process, and I see that 24 of the projects were denied or withdrawn in fiscal year 2024. So I guess my question is specifically, are some applications ultimately denied because of content? Because I see that that's one of your, in the very final steps of the process, there have been some that have been denied for content. Is that correct?
Yes, there have been some.
So the governor's office has the responsibility as the production moves forward and as the production is reviewed that if it doesn't meet all the standards that have been set and are very clear going into the agreement, that the governor, the office retains the ability to say, I'm sorry, but it's denied. You're not getting your incentive grant.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Whalen, could you please identify yourself for the record?
Yes, I'm Stephanie Whalen, and I'm the director of the Texas Film Commission.
Thank you. Senator West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Senator Huffman, for this bill. Two questions. On page 5, and this is, what are uplifts?
So the uplifts are the additional grants that a project could qualify for. We do have uplifts in the current program. There's a 2.5%. So in addition to, say it's a project that qualifies at the highest level at 20%, if they are filming in an underutilized area, they can receive an additional 2.5%. If they are designated a heritage project, they can receive.
All those in that block? In that
Yes,
box,
all
those
of those in
additions.
that block. Now, under the current program, they are not stackable, other than the heritage. Heritage is the only one that you can combine with something else. So the maximum amount that you could receive under the current program is 25%. Under SB 22, you can combine these additional grants for these additional production requirements up to a maximum of 31%.
Okay, and now, and I'm gonna go back to Senator Huffman's question about the process, and the, let's see, what page is that? Page 10, I think. In terms of 24% of the applications were denied. I think it was on page, was it page 10? Yeah, page 10. Now, in terms of persons or businesses, no, I'm gonna say persons, business entities included in that definition. They know going into the process what the standards are and what they have to meet. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
So-
correct, Senator.
So when you say application process, 24% of the applications made did not meet the standards of the program going into the process. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And that's during the application review.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And just to clarify, that's not 24%, that's just 24 of the 96 that applied.
24. Okay.
Yes, sir.
24. Right.
Yes, sir.
And thank you.
Ms. Whalen, did you have a presentation to make?
Yes, absolutely.
But maybe before that, we have another question. We have Senator Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adriana, we have a lot of tax incentive programs in the state. I don't know if I've ever seen one that quite has a flow chart like this. It is very detailed. It seems like there are a lot of checks and balances in this process. So for anyone who's listening out there that is maybe misinformed or uninformed, what can you say to assure them that the program is being mindful of state funds, taxpayer dollars, and that everything that is used has an ROI that goes a very long way? Now, I got the calculation on here, but for those people who are just, again, maybe misinformed, we want to make sure that they know that this program is being combed very fine, and that there are so many provisions in here that would not allow for any missteps, any misuse of public money.
Thank you so much, Senator Alvarado, for those comments. We take our duty to the Texas taxpayers very, very seriously. And we know that these are Texas taxpayer dollars. And so we have a very thorough system, a very thorough process. It is very thoughtful. And we are looking, of course, for the creation of jobs for Texans, and for that investment in our state and that spending in our state. We have a wonderful team at the Texas Film Commission of very folks with really deep industry experience that understand the industry. And so we take this duty very seriously. Thank you for saying that.
Senator Safarini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cruz, could you give us more details about the kinds of local businesses that would benefit and the kinds of local jobs that would be created?
Yes, Senator, thank you. A lot of these productions, when they come into a town or a city, they have catering needs. They buy lumber from the lumber yard. They have the hotels. I know that at one point, and there may be, Ms. Whalen may have some additional detail, but The Chosen, when they came into Midlothian and they had a major scene, you know, the hotels were booked. And so it really benefits a lot of our businesses and our small businesses in particular. Prior to my appointment by the governor in this position, I was at the Greater San Marcos Partnership, and Hays and Caldwell County have been the beneficiary of numerous productions that film in that area, including Boyhood and The Leftovers. And I can, you know, assure you that from a local economic development and economic developer perspective, those productions that are coming in and buying a year's worth of lumber from the lumber yard to build sets and hiring carpenters and utilizing a lot of the small businesses in that community, it really brings a significant impact to that area.
Yes, one of the things we make sure, and I'll add to the list of businesses, is dry cleaners get very, very busy. They can make their yearly nut if a large-scale TV show comes to your town. One of the things we make sure that our communities are aware when they get film-friendly certified is that they know how to match their local businesses to production needs. And that can include anything from like the breakfast taco vendor. They're about to get really busy too, because believe it or not, to feed a full-size crew, you need at least 500 breakfast tacos. So that's an important tidbit for all of our local businesses to understand when they're welcoming production.
And I think that's one reason why the Film Friendly Texas Certified Community Program is very important, because it really is educating our small and medium-sized communities on what will they need to do to prepare for when a production comes into town. And so making sure that they have that infrastructure in place, those plans in place, so they can support that production.
Thank you. I'm surprised that the return on investment is not higher. I expected it. I asked the question last time we heard testimony about this issue, and I expected a higher return on investment. Do you think that since we are investing, or we plan to invest more money in this program this session, that the return on investment will be even higher than 469?
That is difficult to calculate. As I said, the return on investment is based on the spend minus the cost, which is the grant that we're providing. Now, if you look at the 1883 example, because the residency requirements have gone down, that means that Texas payroll is also less. And so return on investment, we're not able to provide an estimate on what that looks like or will look like under Senate Bill 22 yet. But I will say, Senator Zaffarini, we took your words to heart on an economic impact analysis, because a true economic impact analysis looks not just at the direct jobs and the direct spend, but what happens because the dry cleaner made their year and they had to hire additional staff and they had to buy additional supplies. So all of that impact in the community and across the state. So we are working with our community partners right now to do a true economic impact so that we can get those figures for you.
Thank you. Years ago, those of us who worked hard for this kind of funding were faced with a criticism that this was really an Austin project. Do you believe that the criteria and standards built into the project this time will answer that criticism, quash that criticism, and really establish this as a statewide program that especially will benefit rural areas?
I truly believe so. We did see, of course, at the start of the program, a lot of focus on Austin and Dallas. But today we're seeing productions in East Texas, in West Texas, in the Panhandle, in rural communities. And so I think there is absolutely benefit to our smaller and rural communities.
Do you have some of the names of the Texans who will be involved in this project, big names?
Of the, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Senator Huffman asked a question about stars with Texas names, Texans versus others. What are some of the big names?
There's him right there.
He's at the top of the list, of course, but other big names?
Well, I thought it was really interesting that the statement of the stars who are not living in Texas, I think it's just a matter of time before we start to see some migration as well.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
And my final question is, how will the different productions indicate that the Texas legislature provided funding? Will there be a logo?
Yes, ma'am.
We currently require the logo for all applicants who are coming through the program and successfully complete the program. They have to have a logo, which is a single title card at the end, thanking the Office of the Governor and using the Texas Film Commission logo. So it's already required, but that's how folks know.
That's why my question is about the legislature.
Oh, the legislature. We can revise the language.
And it should be required to be kept on screen for a certain length of time, not just a blink of an eye.
Should we give you an introducing credit? That'd be perfect.
Thank you both. Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question will go, y'all have done a really good job of detailing the local spend and the different categories of the breakdown of the local spend. And it's pretty obvious, and we heard a lot of this the first time we heard the bill. The longer we do this, the more people putting these projects together think about Texas. The more we raise the level, the more of it we get. And once we get to this level, if we're able to maintain it, which is the intent over an extended period of time, my question goes to the money that's left being processed somewhere else. And so do we know, for instance, like 1883, we know what the spend is here. The type of processing, I guess a lot of it goes on in California. Nobody's going to set up in Texas to do that type of processing until they can see a significant amount of business locally and a future for an investment. And so my mind's thinking about that which might move here, which would make it even more attractive for those businesses to film here because they can get it processed here, which then kicks them up to the next level. So do we have any percent idea of, like on the 1883, and this is where the question is, we know what port is spent in Texas, what percentage is being processed elsewhere that might potentially be attracted to Texas at some point? Is it 20%, 30%, or half?
We can probably get those figures for you. We do know what the total production budget is and then what they are estimating they will spend in Texas. And so that delta would be what is being spent elsewhere. I think one of the things behind the movement and the encouragement of bringing more production to the state is that helps to build infrastructure as
Right.
well. And so this is getting us the popularity of Texas as a production location, which is our function, right, to promote Texas in that industry, is really making us more attractive for that infrastructure investment, for the studios, for the sound stages.
Right, and so those, I call it processing, and
Yes.
the big term, But that processing, that they still have to send everything to California to have it edited and all this kind of stuff. Once they see consistency and a higher volume, those people will be thinking about locating here because it would be much more attractive to the people trying to film here to process it here. And then that would be a local spend, which would kick them up to the next notch in our grants. But also, if it's infrastructure on the ground, Texas already has incentives, economic development grants, and things like that at the local level, which could then trigger in as well to help locate them. So
That's
I can
correct.
see a win-win and a grow. In other words, we want it all.
That's correct, we do.
All right, thank you.
We do have another program, the Media Production Development Zone, that is used to help incentivize the infrastructure, the building of the sound stages and the studios and things like that.
Chair Huffman.
No, I'm okay.
All right, Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So personally, I think there's no value at all using God's name in vain in movies or anywhere else. But while I see listed specific projects not eligible, but I don't find that profanity is limited in any way. Is it, and are there ratings? I mean, you'll find God's name in vain on PG-13 movies right before the plot thickens. But is there anything like that in here? Listen to you. And it's really more the F-bomb. It's really more the F-bomb and God's name in vain. But I don't find where that has a limitation of it at all. Is there?
I think the rules right now are very much set for looking at other types of materials
Images.
that have now been codified. So there isn't anything specific to profanity, no.
Well, I would just say we're still in the Bible Belt and there's just no value. So maybe that's just my 2 cents, but I think that should be considered at least out of the governor's office.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator West.
Senator Campbell, on page 2 of the committee substitute, line 9,
Yep.
it prohibits pornography or obscene materials as defined by the penal code.
But it doesn't say language. It's visual.
Well, right.
If it includes obscene materials, that's what I was wanting to get at.
Yeah, that's,
That would be something that would be measured. So,
my question is this. This is Texas. When we look at this particular bill, and let's assume that it becomes law, which it probably will, okay? How will we compare with other states in terms of providing these incentives? Kind of give me an idea, will Texas end up being number one, or who's going to be our closest competitor?
We have certainly heard from productions over the past several years. We're always competing against Georgia, against New Mexico. I think during the interim, we heard testimony about a Texas story that was ultimately filmed in New Mexico for lack of incentives. It will certainly put us in a top tier. I think one of the challenges that we have had over the years is the slide that I showed on the level of funding and the inconsistency of the funding relative to the increase in production levels and production budgets. And so this will certainly help address that consistency issue and really make us very, very competitive.
And this particular money, will it be inside the budget, outside the treasury, inside or outside the treasury?
It's outside the treasury.
And the reason is?
Well, it's a certain, so there's certainty in the funding for the next 10 years.
And having that certainty in funding will help us make certain that we don't have ebbs and flows, is that?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Senator Bennecourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on Senator Campbell's comments, and I'll try to give a practical example. When you look at Landman, I don't see the crew in the audience, but I would make the same comment. It's completely wrong. It's not functionally correct. It doesn't explain what a landman does. And no offense, having Billy Bob Thornton F-bomb every other sentence is not, in my mind, Texas values. So we do need to get a handle on this. because that's a clear differentiator between a bad product, okay, and it simply is a bad product, and not something that the Texas taxpayers would want to be supporting. So how can we get that done?
I think we would certainly look at not only the statute, but our rules, and take that into consideration.
Am I, missing it from an objective point of view?
Our job is to implement the programs that you all give us with the funding that you give us, and so we will, we'll make it work as best we can.
Well, I wasn't a fan of machete either, okay? But there are people in the audience that we're going to hear from later that have a more qualified product. But we just have to realize that there's a line here that needs to be drawn. Senator Campbell's correct about language, and that's one example that I think that the public, if they watched it enough, would probably agree. But more importantly, we've got to have a standard that sets a tone for the state of Texas and what we're going to support and what we're not going to support. And I, for one, am not unafraid to call out bad product when I see it. So you all will have to be able to make those decisions. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I think it's kind of difficult to micromanage the film industry to a certain extent.
Senator Hinojosa, I totally disagree. You know why? Because that film, that whole genre of Landman is incorrect. It doesn't describe the Texas oil field. And having a guy that just his primary claim to fame is an F-bomb every other 2 seconds, it's not something I want to see on television, and I certainly don't want us to put our money behind it.
Okay.
So I have to agree with Senator Campbell on this, that we have to take a look at, the trivialization of obscene language to the point where it becomes a repetitive nightmare for the viewers. And certainly, that is not a family-friendly show by any stretch of the imagination that I understand. So I don't mean to disagree, with you from the standpoint of capriciously, but there's just simply no factor supposition to the fact that a show like that should get our money.
Your point is well taken. I think we don't have any other questions, but, Senator Barao.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would allow me to indulge here on the comments that were made. Look, you can't police this stuff. You start to get on, I think, some infringements here. But I wanted to also ask if other states have, to the very specific degree that they're talking about, because what I see in the bill on page 1, section 1.01, it talks about the inappropriate content or content that portrays Texas or Texans in a negative fashion. I would think that covers some of the concerns that some of my colleagues may have. Ms. Cruz, do you know of any other state that has stipulations to the very down to the wording of what actors may say?
I do not. I'm looking at our director, Stephanie Whalen. I don't believe another state, do they?
I know that other states do try to address content, but not to the sort of way that we have. And to be clear, what is written in SB 22 has existed in our rules for a very long time. So we are already doing that when we review applications. So I can get more information about other states. I know that they try to address them, but not in this exact way.
Yeah, we're getting our tail kicked here. Okay, I was going to use another word, but I don't want to upset you. But we're getting our tail kicked here by some of our neighboring states. And the bottom line here is about how do we continue to diversify our economy in Texas. To me, I see this as a workforce issue. Thank you.
Chair Huffman.
Just a couple of comments about this general discussion. And again, and I think Senator West had pointed it out earlier, that if you look at the intent language of the bill, it makes it very clear that the office of the governor is not required to act on any grant application and can deny an application because of inappropriate content or content that portrays Texas or Texans in a negative fashion. Your office continues to have discretion throughout the process, no matter what was decided at the beginning. And I think I made that point through questioning. And that the bill tells you that you should consider general standards of decency and respect for the diverse beliefs and values of the citizens of Texas. We want Texas to be portrayed in a positive light. That's the bottom line. Does the office of the governor agree with that? And can you carry out the objectives of this legislation?
Absolutely. And as Ms. Whalen stated earlier, this is already in our rules. So this is something that we are already doing.
And to be clear, filmmakers can still make whatever they want. We're not violating, the First Amendment in any way. It's just if the Texas tax dollars are going to be part of this incentive, then there are there's just parameters that they'll have to follow. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I'll also point out that actually there's a case that the Fifth Circuit held in Machete Productions, LLC, which, going back to Senator Betancourt's question, that the government can, without violating the Constitution, selectively fund a program to encourage certain activities that it believes to be in the public interest. So we're within legal parameters here. Yes, will there be a little bit of subjective determination? But I think what we're also doing, members, is beefing up the commission through adding FTEs, more employees, to make sure that the head of the commission is well paid, well qualified, and I think the legislature is making its intent very clear about how they would like the program to look. And I think that's, a fair assessment of this.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you follow that?
No, I think that's all been stated very, very well. We do, as I said earlier, we take our job very, very seriously. Our goal is to make Texas the moving image industry capital of the United States, if not the world. And so we, as I said, implement the programs that the legislature gives us with the funding that you give us to the best of our abilities.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done, Senator Campbell.
Thank you. And I appreciate the comments by our Chairwoman Huffman and Senator Alvarado, especially Senator Betancourt with that. I think it's a good bill. The purpose of it and everything, that's not the question. We have the discretion and it's outlined, no porn, no images. You couldn't say specific on language. If we're saying it's family friendly, Texas, it's all about Texas, yet would we allow our children in the schoolrooms to use this language? Yet it may be put on television that they're going to hear it. So if we're going to go family friendly, then we should stay family friendly. It doesn't mean you can't use some words. There are just a few words that are more offensive. And I don't know about anybody else in this room, but using the words at home in front of children are not good, and it's not good to put them on the screen. It's not good to use taxpayer dollars for that. I mean, I believe it's good. I recognize other states are doing this, but we are regulating images. And so I think that we just need to make sure the language, and while the governor does have discretion, and I think that's good, but whoever has the discretion to decide whether something subjectively is approved or disapproved is going to come from their view of what is Texas culture and value. So with that, it was really more just a comment, and thank you very much.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. So just a observation, a commentary. So in light of what Chair Huffman was saying and the language of the bill, which establishes fences, if you will, as to what we're expecting on behalf of the people of the state of Texas for our investment, that you're basically reviewing the industry is coming forward to set the tone of what we want, to talk about the Texas brand and what everything about Texas included in the storytelling. That the product that you're presenting is something that's reflective of what the people of Texas expect and what other people would think of Texas to come to us, not only in the movie industry, but everything else that we would like to come here. And basically, it weave in the story of Texas. I guess everything probably hear being representative of Texas, the story, the tone, the brand of Texas. Um, and the language and the telling of that story can be done effectively through the artistry of the trade, if you will. Mr. McConaughey, I watched a movie just Saturday of yours, Interstellar. It was a very, very good story that was told very intelligently, very comprehensively, very in terms of humanity, and you said it and you told the story and that long script without being full of profanity, but if you, so I guess it can be done. I've seen you do it, and in fact that was a very good movie, amongst others. But telling that story. So I guess what I'm saying is that the setting of the tone, the things I just described, is that what you've got the Office of the Governor is going to do in implementing this bill?
Yes, sir, and part of that is what we are already doing with the, under TMIP and under the projects that we reviewed today. And just to remind you, part of the goal is for Texans to tell Texas stories. But Texas is such a diverse state geographically that we can actually tell stories that take place in other places, and we can double for other locations. And so in addition to the Texas stories that we want our storytellers to be able to tell, there's many stories and many locations that can be used in Texas.
Thank you, and that's what kind of what we're after here is not only tell the story of Texas, but tell the story of how Texas impacts the rest of the world and everything that we do in affecting the world and our way of life and the things that we have to offer and the diversity of Texas. So I thank you very much. That's the only question I have.
Thank you, Senator Flores. I don't think we have any